Picture the moment before the universe existed. If you were imagining a massive, dark, empty room stretching out forever, you are picturing it wrong. Silence requires an environment to be silent in. An empty room must have physical dimensions, and waiting in the dark requires time to tick by. In physics, time does not exist as an eternal, independent background. It is born strictly out of change. If absolutely nothing is moving, expanding, or reacting, time does not flow. Look at this graphic comparing our perception to a pre-universe state. On the left, oscillating waves represent change, the sequence of events the mind relies on. On the right, a perfectly flat line. No contrast, no sequence, no movement. Without a sequence of events, there is no past or future. Because time itself had not yet started, asking what happened before the universe began mathematically breaks down. Think about the geometry of Earth. If you stand exactly at the North Pole and someone asks you to walk further north, you simply cannot. The direction of north ceases to exist at that specific coordinate. Asking what came before time dissolves in the exact same logical way. There is no before because the concept of sequence has no physical meaning there. Here, a single point of infinite density pulls the space-time grid into a tightly closed loop. Notice how the grid vanishes into the center. There is no outside. The entire concept of everywhere is folded into this single coordinate. The universe emerged as an undivided, unmanifest state, a field of infinite potential containing everything before it ever took form. As this potential broke open, space itself unfolded from within. This expansion created the very room required for the universe to exist. In that exact fraction of a second, as dimensions stretched outward, the first actual sequence of events took place. Time began ticking forward. This timeline tracks the initial expansion. Starting at zero, an immediate, massive exponential spike appears. In fractions of a second, space stretched faster than light. As expansion spiked, unity fractured completely. The line divides into distinct waves, representing gravity, electromagnetism, and nuclear forces separating. With the universe expanding so rapidly, the concentrated energy began to cool. The separated forces acted on this cooling energy, allowing it to lock together into the first stable physical particles. The once undivided coordinate fractured. This sudden, violent shift into multiplicity defines the birth of the universe. Even with particles forming the first atoms of hydrogen and helium, there were no stars. The young universe entered a long period dominated by vast, dark, shifting clouds of simple elements, completely devoid of light structures. Inside those dark clouds, gravity went to work as the quiet architect of reality. Any region with a slightly higher density exerted a slightly stronger pull, dragging in neighboring material over millions of years. We can visualize this process here. As the vector particles clumping together into the gravitational well, their density and vibration speed increase dramatically. Once they hit the necessary threshold of heat and pressure, they ignite. The first massive stars burned brilliantly, but were incredibly unstable. They quickly exhausted their fuel and collapsed, blasting outward in immense spherical shockwaves called supernovae. The extreme temperatures and pressures inside those dying stars acted as a cosmic forge. They took simple particles and crushed them together to create much heavier elements like carbon, oxygen, and iron, every atom required to form a rocky planet, and every chemical necessary for human biology was manufactured directly inside the core of a dying star. From that single microscopic point of infinite density, the universe expanded into this, a sprawling web spanning billions of light years, holding thousands of distinct galaxy clusters along its glowing filaments. This architecture only exists because the forces that separated at the beginning were precisely calibrated. If gravity had been slightly stronger, everything would have collapsed back in on itself. If the expansion was slightly faster, matter would never have gathered at all. This diagram traces the chain of complexity. Basic particles bind into atoms, which group into stars. Star fusion yields heavy elements. These elements gather to form rocky planets, eventually creating the specific chemical environments required to support biological life. Look at the trajectory. The cosmos operates as an evolutionary engine, continually pushing simple, isolated particles toward highly structured, interconnected awareness. Right now, intricate synapse networks in your brain are firing to process these concepts. The atoms powering that current were forged in ancient supernovae. Before the universe unfolded, there was no perspective, no eyes to see light, no ears to hear sound, no structure to have an experience. By expanding, cooling, and stacking particles into increasingly intricate patterns for nearly 14 billion years, the universe constructed a biological mechanism that can look backward. We started with pure, silent unity. Now we have immense diversity, living organisms on a small planet, asking out loud where they came from. Your biological presence is a continuation of the first tick of existence. Through your curiosity, cosmic history finally achieves awareness of itself.